Well, Steve, thanks for jumping in today. Appreciate you guys' visit. You're in town this week for
Blind Mile Summit. So OVD team down here hanging out with FedEx DSPs, just enjoying the networking, enjoying the opportunity to sit down with some of our clients, obviously see some prospects, other industry vendors. It's always just amazing at those events when you get people in the room together, the conversations, the idea sharing, really, it brings a gravity to the industry. It brings a gravity to the network around the community, and always appreciate that.
Awesome. Well, we're glad you're able to make some time to swing by the office. So we've had quite a few conversations today, all in the world of insurance, but just for the sake of kind of introducing yourself, can you give us a little bit about you, background, OVD, and what you service?
Yeah, absolutely. So OVD Insurance, we're a top 100 independent insurance agency. What that means is we're privately held. And as an independent insurance agency, our responsibility is to work with our clients, represent them to the insurance carrier marketplace, ultimately bring them back, all of the options that the insurance carrier marketplace could bring forward. So best coverages, obviously best pricing, best terms when it comes to payment option, best claims handling. We're considering all of those different things on behalf of our clients. Me personally, I've been in the insurance industry for about 10 years now. The last 4 years have been specific to the final mile industry, and I lead OVD's final mile division. We've got 8 people. We work with clients across 46 different states, FedEx CSPs, FedEx TSPs. We've got Amazon DSPs, Amazon AFPs. Basically, you name it, we're working in the final mile industry on folks' insurance programs.
Excellent. So tons of knowledge and expertise in the space.
Something like that.
Yeah. So today we talked about a few different kind of coverage types, and I appreciate your perspective on these things because you see behind the curtain on where the application is of it, and real world anecdotal stories as to where the applications come from. And one thing that stood out today, and we've heard some chatter of it in the DSP space as we've tenured and run across maybe an HR challenge or something like that, but EPLI insurance. So can you give us a quick overview of what that is, application of it, and why it might be beneficial to someone in the DSP space?
Yeah. So Employment Practices Liability Insurance. That's EPLI. Employment Practices Liability Insurance, what it does, it defends businesses and business owners from claims of harassment, discrimination, wrongful hiring, wrongful termination. Even if you have an active agent, for example, an employee that's operating on your behalf, your company's behalf, and they go out and they're accused of harassment, discrimination, this coverage would step in. It can pay for legal fees, which obviously through Ogletree and Navigator in the DSP space, that's being taken care of to some capacity, but it will also pay for the settlements that come out of some of those suits, whether that's settled outside of court or actually in the courts. So bang for your buck is a really interesting term to throw out there as an insurance agent, but every small business owner should have EPLI coverage because at the end of the day, you're paying $2,500, $5,000 a year. And the average EPL lawsuit that a small business owner faced in the last calendar year was upwards of $250,000. So, I mean, it can be the difference when something happens, whether it's a legitimate, suit or an illegitimate suit. If that's brought against a business owner, that can be the difference between your doors staying open and your doors closing. So anyone that has employees has an EPL exposure. So you have both the internal exposure, which would be an employee coming against you as the business owner, as the employer, saying, hey, you didn't pay me all of the wages that I was entitled to, a wage and hour suit. You have EPL coverage for that. And then if you have an employee who's facing anyone, outside as a third party, be it a customer, a counterpart, a subsidiary business, you have EPL exposure. So the minute you have employees, it's probably something you should consider. I would say most businesses with 10 or more employees, you definitely have to have EPL.
Okay. And as you scale and start to implement those initial managers, more important and folks there that are agents on your behalf.
Absolutely.
More risk, more exposure potentially.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, hot topic in all of AFP, DSP space, insurance, auto liability insurance. So we've looked at the FedEx space and how that differentiates. Can you talk about the delta there? As to how auto premiums are written?
Yeah, sure. The biggest difference between a FedEx CSP and an Amazon DSP or AFP is that on the Amazon side, you're running underneath your own authority, right? You've got your own DOT number, you've got your own MC number. On the FedEx side, you're running underneath FedEx Express Corporation's DOT number. The language that I use to explain this to customers or people who are learning about the space is that the liability is going to follow the authority. So as an Amazon DSP or AFP, because you're operating under your own authority, the liability is following you. The insurance company, when it comes to auto insurance, their biggest exposure is on that auto liability. So on the FedEx side, since they're not picking up that big exposure, premiums are far less. I mean, they are pennies as compared to the dollars that DSPs and AFPs are paying over here. With that in mind, as those rates, and I mean, as we've just seen claims increase, go up over time, those rates have increased. And I just don't think that the Amazon clientele have been well educated. I don't think that they fully understand, why rates have increased the way that they have. And what we're trying to do is obviously, bring solutions to folks like yourself, your clients. And at the same point, help customers become better purchasers of insurance and prepare themselves so that if their organization is on the desk of an underwriter, and so are, 20, 30, 40 other DSPs, what is it about that one organization that is setting them apart that makes that underwriter say, I want to partner with that company? That's who I want to, for lack of better terms, put my money on.
But a lot of chatter in the space around Amazon DSP auto insurance today. So there's a big delta between that and FedEx. And so can you talk maybe one about what that delta is and how those are quoted differently? And two, what is really driving those rates on the Amazon DSP side?
For sure. So the biggest difference between a FedEx ISP and an Amazon DSP is that Amazon DSPs are operating under their own authority. So we're talking own DOT number, own MC number. FedEx ISPs, they're operating under the authority of FedEx Express Corporation. So as an Amazon DSP, a line that I've used to kind of explain this to partners or clients or prospects is that the liability, the insurance liability, it follows the authority. So therefore, when you're a FedEx ISP, you're operating under FedEx's authority, almost all of the liability is being pushed onto FedEx. Okay. As an Amazon DSP, since you're operating under your own authority, all that liability is coming back to you. What we've seen outside of the DSP space, just in the insurance marketplace, commercial auto, as we like to say, we don't like to say it, but it's running hot. So it's not just Amazon DSPs that are seeing these crazy increases in commercial auto. Any business that has a fleet, whether it's large trucks or just, private passenger vehicles, they are seeing their commercial auto rates increase. For DSPs, I think there's a variety of reasons that the auto insurance has kind of gotten out of control. You go back to 2018 when DSP 2.0 launched. The insurance industry, we're kind of archaic, kind of bureaucratic, typically behind the times. The industry wasn't prepared for what Amazon was doing through DSP 2.0. So that's kind of element number one. A lot of insurance carriers weren't rating this correctly from the start. So quite frankly, DSPs probably weren't paying enough in insurance. And so a lot of the big carriers got way behind on this class of business. And then thirdly, today, both DSPs, they don't have the proper education or the proper tools to tell their story to the insurance marketplace, to explain to insurance underwriters that, we are growing, every day does look different, but here are the controls that we have in place to kind of weather that storm and, be consistent through the chaos, for lack of better terms. And then what's more is those insurance underwriters, they haven't had the right kind of story told to them. They haven't been given all of the facts. They don't really know all of the controls that are in place, both from Amazon, but then that the best DSPs are using to keep their businesses operating safely and profitably.
Okay, so you touched on best DSPs from a safety perspective and a risk mitigation perspective. And you also talked about telling your story. So hindsight's 2020. We can tell a story about what we've done with former incidents. But what are the maybe top 2 or 3 things that a DSP can do proactively as they're entering the next insurance renewal?
Yeah, I love this idea. Yeah, I love this idea. So the analogy that I've been using recently is that, and this goes back really to the insurance industry being bureaucratic, slow moving, and quite frankly, reactive, because we're trying to predict the future. And the best way to typically predict the future is let's look at the past, right? the downstream indicators of a poor performer or a good performer in our industry is what are your loss runs like, right? And then of the loss runs or the claims that you've experienced, what have you done about those incidents? And, what are you doing moving forward? That's essentially the story that is given to most underwriters. And it's completely reactive because if you have a claim, it's already too late. And once you have that claim, you can only hope to do things better in the future so that it doesn't happen again, right? So a couple things to answer your question directly that we're recommending to all of our clients as they head towards their next renewal. First and foremost, it's MVR monitoring. If you look at insurance claims across any industry, something like 75% or 80% of claims have to do with human error. When you're talking about employees that are driving all of the time, 90% of claims that DSPs face, it's because of human error. So our idea is that if we can catch that large claim that is going to happen downstream or could happen downstream before it's even in your van behind the wheel of one of your vehicles, that's the best form of risk mitigation. So what MVR monitoring does, first, when you're going to hire an employee, it's going to give you, an interesting picture of what the, MVR report has on them. So things like speeding violations, just moving violations in a car in general. Sometimes even if they have, whether it's a tax lien or child support that hasn't been paid, depending on the state, that will pop up on that report as well. It just gives the business owner a glance or a look into who this person is that I'm about to hire. And then what's more is you might hire someone and they could be perfect on day one, but then 3 months down the road, 6 months down the road, if you're not staying on top of what is this person, doing both within my business, but also outside of my business, you could have this massive exposure living within your company and have no idea. So in short, if you can take that information, put it on a silver platter to an underwriter and explain to them, yeah, we are dispatching 50, 60, 70 vehicles a day, but this is how we're ensuring that we have the least opportunity for a large claim to occur, including we're looking into the driving record, both at the time of hire and on an ongoing basis for every single one of our drivers. That's going to separate a DSP. A DSP who's doing that is separating themselves from probably 80, 90% of their peers, at least.
So yeah, prior to talking to you, ignorant from an insurance perspective. Sure. And we spent hours and hours talking about this as we've tried to improve, our performance and tried to advocate and consult and provide expertise to our client base. So I appreciated all of that you've given. But, when I first heard MVR monitoring, first thing that came to mind was I can't place a driver on the road until they've had an MVR.
Right.
The delta here that you're explaining is to say, yes, that's great pre-hire. We need that to make hiring decisions. But from an ongoing basis, what's happening outside of maybe the work ecosystem, a driver gets a DUI, a driver gets in an accident in their personal vehicle, they have multi traffic infractions. We want to know about that because that's going to inform, probably their safety and things that they're going to be doing while they're on the job.
People can only hide who they really are for so long. That sounds very basic and a little cliche, but it's true. And the reality is that if you have someone that's working for you, that's acting on your behalf, that isn't a good person, or for lack of better terms, isn't following the rules, it's only a matter of time until that negatively impacts your business. And we joke, insurance underwriters, most of them are great people, but I swear when they show up to their offices, there's no windows. They just lock themselves in their cage and they turn off all of their just standard human element-esque, actions. It's our job, both as the insurance agent, but it's employers' jobs as the business owner to bring back that human element to the underwriter's desk and show them, hey, no, take the numbers out of it. That's important. Obviously, the premium we've paid in, the losses that have been paid out, that's all important. But these are the intangibles. These are the subjectives. These are the additional things that I'm doing to make my business the very best that it can be. This is why you want to work.
Okay. And so you've talked about MVR, continuous MVR monitoring. Is that something that a DSP needs to go out and source through some sort of external vendor? Are there programs that you're aware of that are available for DSPs through maybe the DSP program or, a national company that is focused on this? Or is that like products and things that y'all are able to?
Yeah. Good. Another really good question. The answer is all of the above. We do have a solution. We've got a third-party partner that we've been pushing through our agency for a very long time, and it's a partner that we're bringing to the DSP space, pretty regularly at this point. The reality is that MVRs, they're state-sanctioned documents, so it's produced by the local government. But you get any government form, it's kind of hard to interpret and hard to apply to your business. So our third-party partner, what they do is they're taking that information, they're putting it onto a dashboard that is interpretable, that's usable, and ultimately can be applied back to your business. And a lot of people come to me and say, okay, this sounds great, but I'm waiting for the hook. Like, what's the cost and things like this? Every single state has a different dollar amount to pull an MVR originally, or, if an MVR needs to be pulled because there is a negative infraction, that rate is going to change. But the actual ongoing fee for monitoring these drivers over time is only a couple dollars a month. So when we're looking at this, even for a business that has 100, 150 employees, we're talking about at most a $4,000, maybe $5,000 annual expenditure. And it could legitimately save a business tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars on insurance, both in the short term and over the long run. So it can make a really big impact.
Okay, so we've talked about continuous MVR monitoring, but what else should DSPs be looking to institute proactively as they're heading into renewal seasons?
Yeah.
And to supplement their story. So these things have happened, and I've done this about it. And looking ahead, I'm adding these things.
Right.
What sort of things are you hearing are benefiting?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you're headed into your insurance renewal, the first thing you need to do is, if you've had claims, you need to have an explanation for the underwriter of, hey, this is what happened. These are all the details. Typically on a loss history report, it's just a couple of sentences. Give them more details, be transparent on what happened with that claim. If you have, the better footage of the incident, show it to me. That's never going to hurt you. And then what's more, and obviously most important of that, is even though this is what happened, this is what we learned, and this is what we're now doing to hopefully further prevent that or completely prevent that going forward. So, the narrative behind the claim is crucial. Past that, I like to talk a lot about what are you doing above and beyond, Amazon's hiring standards or practices.
Yeah.
That's one standard. Is your standard? It should be above and beyond that. So just because Amazon approves a driver to become a part of your business doesn't mean that, you're necessarily going to hire them, right? So what are those other qualities that you're looking for in those individuals that get approved by Amazon before you allow them to get into one of your vehicles and actually start acting on your behalf?
Yep.
And kind of parlaying off of that, things like supplemental information on employee handbooks, right? Like, what is the standard that we hold all of our employees to, and do you have that in written form? Most people do. It's not something they typically share with underwriters. What kind of initial training, programs do we send our employees through? So before they're actually out on route by themselves, are they taking, driving tests? Are they riding around with a more experienced driver out on route to kind of get the lay of the land? And then arguably more importantly than that, because it's only human tendency to become complacent eventually, what are we doing from a retraining perspective? So how are we using our Netrodyne data? How are we coaching our employees both when they're out on route, after they're out on route? What are our ongoing monthly safety meetings? What are we talking about? What's the cadence? How many strikes are we giving a driver of making mistakes before we let them know that, hey, like, we have a standard here and you're just not a fit for our company?
Yeah.
All of that information, it's going to be huge. And, Adam, I get it. Business owners, specifically DSPs, this insurance game, first of all, we're talking about it, and it's not the best thing in the world to talk about, let alone when it's super expensive and you feel like you're putting all this effort in and you're not getting any return back from the insurance carrier marketplace. But the message that I would want to share with DSPs is that you just need to keep going on. You need to be willing to do the work to separate yourself from your peers. That is the only way for your business and also for the entire network of DSPs that we're going to be able to solve this really insurance crisis over time.
Yeah. Great way to sum it up. It's going to take effort. It's going to take intentionality. It's going to take, some investment, both financially and from a time perspective, to ensure that the long-term value is available to you.